Everybody to today's webinar. Sorry, we're having a little technical difficulty getting one of our speakers logged in, but we're ready to go. I'm Carl Holman, Communications Manager here at A&G Mortgage. I want to welcome everybody to today's webinar on using artificial intelligence to supercharge a business. We've got a good panel today. We're going to try to get through it a little quicker since we are running a couple minutes late. So I'll just quickly go over the rules. Just if you can just keep your cell phones off, give us your full attention, use the chat feature, the Q&A feature in your panel to ask us questions. We'll go ahead and answer them as quickly as we can. I've added a few minutes towards the end since we started a little late, so be patient, everyone. So for those brokers who are attending here and aren't familiar with A&D Mortgage, we're one of the top non-QM lenders in the country. We're nationwide. We are primarily a wholesale lender, but we work with conventional government non-QM loans. We are backed by a company called Imperial Fund, and that allows us to write our own proprietary non-QM guidelines and allows us to accept whatever risk we're willing to take on the different types of loans and situations that are out there. I'll skip this for a second. And then again, we're nationwide. You can do business purpose loans with us in 40 states. And as of this morning, we just got our state licensing for the state of Washington. So if anybody is here working or listening from Washington, feel free to start sending us your loans. So let me introduce today's panelists. We're joined today by Tom Showalter, the founder and CEO of Candor Technology. I'll let them give their backgrounds in just a little minute. And then Jim Black, he's co-founder of Revest Homes. And Scott Shang, he's a content creator and the owner and founder of findmywayhome.com. So we're going to start off today with the three of them introducing ourselves, and then we'll talk a little bit about artificial intelligence. So Tom, go ahead, take it away.
Sure. So the way I think about artificial intelligence, it's basically at a high level, there's two different kinds that devolve into a variety of different kinds. There's those that learn patterns in data and seek to anticipate the next pattern in data. And those are typically things like generative AI. And even such simple things as spell check, they're all roughly the same methodology. And then you have those that are trying to organize and structure a machine to think like a particular kind of person or particular kind of expert. And typically things like robotic process automation, very simple form of that, and expert systems where you model the critical thinking of a particular kind of expert is another example of that. So in both of these two basic different kinds, those that learn from data and those that rely on the structure of human thought, both of those are have definite strengths and also some clear limitations. So the generative AI kind of thing is very good at anticipating the next best event in a particular sequence. And it does that, and it's trained on billions of data sets, so billions of items in a data set, and it's very good at mapping out the web of associations. What it's not very good at is if you have to corroborate something, if you have to get some kind of transparency, it has great difficulty with that. Those that rely on human thought, they're costly to develop. You have to really think through what the thought structure is and what the logical infrastructure is, and then you have to explain it to the machine. So once you get there, it can be quite powerful. But those are the two basic kinds, and they're in use in a lot of different places now. And you just have to know what kind you're dealing with in order to anticipate what the challenges might be.
Great. Thanks.
Go ahead.
So what we've decided to focus in on are the types that people are familiar with today. And right now, obviously, CHATGPT is dominating the discussion, as well as Bard, and then the new one that came online a couple weeks ago from Microsoft, that's part of Bing's platform. They've got another one that they're also working on called Copilot that's supposed to link in with all the Office suite, but that's not ready to go for, I think, at least 6 more months. So most of what we're going to talk about in terms of any examples and demonstrations that we do are going to be for ChatGPT because that's the most widely used. But before we do that, Tom, I'm going to tell people a little bit about yourself so they understand that you clearly know what we're talking about.
Oh, who, me? Oh, sure.
Yeah. Sorry, we skipped the introductions and went right into the AI part. But
I've been working in the field of, let's call them intelligent systems, for over 30 years. I have a bachelor's in psychology. I have a master's and passed my doctorate in statistics. And then I have an MBA from Stanford. And I've been trained by some of the best. I got my first introduction to forms of AI when I was at NASA many years ago, and then expanded upon that with another stint in an aerospace company where I learned a great deal about such things like expert systems. And then I've been head of advanced analytics for CoreLogic at other places where I got to develop a lot of data mining operations, which give rise to generative AI. So I've been at this for quite some time, and progress is steady but slow. But I have had the privilege of getting in conversation with and seeing some of the finest technologies from some of the finest technologists that this area has to offer. It's been my privilege.
great.
Thank you.
Scott and Jim, you guys want to introduce yourselves real quick?
Sure. I guess I'll start. Yeah, I'm Scott Shang. I've been in mortgage originator for over 20 years. Started a consumer direct blog in after the crash in 2007, 2008, and man, I do not have nearly the credentials that Tom has here. I am a dumb marketer. I'm a content marketer. I don't try to understand how all of this works as much as I just try to figure out what I can do with it and what I can do with it in its current stage. And so that's mostly how I use it, is for content creation, repurposing, amplification. I'm using it mostly for marketing.
Jim.
Hi guys, Jim Black. Very nice to meet you all. Thank you for being on the call. Thanks for having me, Carl. And Thomas, I'm honored to be on the call with you and Scott. My background is in about 22 years of mortgage financing. Been lucky to have helped thousands of families with the dream of home ownership. And in my studies of ChatGPT and AI and every other tool, it's trying to get my time back in my day so that I can spend more time on highest and best use activities to get more business for my team and be more relevant in my day-to-day focus. So I'm coming at it from a little different angle of Scott, and I think that's actually a really good compliment today because it will show some perspectives to help you get more efficient with everything, which is exciting. So.
And I'm the communications manager here at A&D. I've been doing mortgages for about the last 8 years, particularly marketing. I'm kind of a bit of a nerd, so I kind of like the techie stuff. So when I started seeing a lot of information going on about AI, even as early as last year, I've been using sort of generative AI platforms for a little close to a year now. Mm-hmm. And I've been learning the tips and tricks. And yeah, I've found that what you've said, it helps you get a big chunk of your day back. And so we'll share some of that with our folks today. I think we can kind of skim over the different types of AI but to help people understand that it's not some monolithic entity, but there's different types. So Tom, we're going to ask you to walk us through kind of quickly. I think everybody immediately, as soon as you hear AI, thinks either Skynet or HAL the Computer from 2001. It's here to eliminate us, and you see that a lot in the some of the media coverage that's going on out there. I'm sure it's a question that brokers are going to have too about the impact it's going to have on their jobs. And so let's just kind of walk through the different types at the moment. So
sure. So this particular type of AI designed to perform specific tasks, everything from robotic process automation to expert systems to specified forms of model application, where you've got a model developed against a set of data that wants to generate a score at a particular part in the process. And as it says here, they include virtual assistants, chatbots, image recognition software. A lot of it is just basically some form of pattern recognition that has come from training the technology on sets of patterns that it then uses to recognize particular problems, particular solutions, and so forth. So that's narrow or weak AI, and it's very, very common. General or strong, designed to perform any intellectual task that a human can do. It can reason, learn, and understand complex ideas. It's still a theoretical concept, not as much as it used to be. This particular kind of AI is growing. It's largely the domain of expert systems or expert systems that can employ particular kinds of machine learning. So we are seeing this type of AI starting to be dynamic and adaptive, but I would not really say that it is something you can go out and buy by Tuesday, but it is something that you can look forward to going forward. Super AI, okay, goes beyond human intelligence, is capable of problem solving that are currently unsolvable by human. It's a theoretical concept. Yeah, since most of this stuff today either gets its intelligence from examining groups of data or examining human thought pattern, the idea that you can go beyond all of that and have something perform intelligently as a machine, that's very hypothetical. We're not there yet. Next one, please. Machine learning. This is something you're probably familiar with. Older forms of machine learning have to do with the old FICO scores that were off of multiple regression methods. And they have evolved to more involved forms of binomial logic regression and also other forms of machine learning, such as neural nets. I want to go to the next one. That's deep learning. So deep learning, basically what you're doing here when you go from machine learning to deep learning is that you just expand the size of the data and the size of the associations the machine can handle. So deep learning gets to some hugely complex data sets. You can give it, for example, 2,000 data elements on 100 million loans to a deep learning platform, and it will figure out how that stuff works. So if you can imagine 100 million loans and 2,000 data points per loan, and the machine can come out and identify loans that are likely to default, loans that are likely to prepay. All those things can be done with a deep learning capability, and it's very powerful. It is very powerful, and it can make advances over standard machine learning, such as multiple regression, binomial logic, or even simple neural nets. So that's basically the domain. It all grow. You'll find a lot of folks with university educations are coming out as deep learning experts, since that's what their PhDs in AI now stress, and that's fine. But you have to recognize you still need to give it data. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think we covered quickly the generative and expert just before after you did your introduction. So we could kind of drill into the generative side right now and go through those types. And this is probably what people are most familiar with if they're working in this industry right now.
So generative AI, this is where a simple example of generative AI, very, very, very limited, but still relevant, is if you know the spell check that you have on your iPhone, where you type in 2 letters of word, it gives you the third letter or maybe the word. That's basically a framework of generative AI. You give it a piece of a concept and it gives you the next piece of the concept. And it's learned that by examining data sets with billions and billions of data points. So that's what generative AI does. And it's very important, it's very sensitive to where you start with the problem and how you define the problem to the technology. And then it takes it from there. It's a starting point. It goes in that huge maze of billions of associations. It starts at a certain place and then it follows a path from there. So that's generative AI. Chatbots, fraud detection, voice assistants. Yeah, they're all basically the same kind of thing, where you have a data set and some sort of target event you're trying to develop. Those data sets or those loans or those particular items that then are correlated with the target event, such as default or such as prepay. Expert systems, they're a little different. Here you're trying to represent the thought structure of a particular kind of expert and program a machine with the critical thinking skills of that particular kind of expert. And one such example of that is my company, Candor, and what it's done with expert systems and creating underwriting, and a less capable but still very representative form of underwriting has to do with what the GSEs propose and produce with the automated underwriting systems. They don't do the full underwrite. They don't validate and verify the data about the borrower. They don't necessarily ensure that all the data and terms conform to the guidelines, but they do give you an expert systems look at the problem in the early stage, and they're valid for that. So there's just 2 different kinds. The generative AI is very data-driven, mathematically intense. And expert systems are more logical structures that are logically intense. So the relationships have to make sense in expert systems, or else the system can't work. So that's how it works.
Great. And as you were kind of mentioning a little bit, particularly it probably applies on the underwriting side, some of the artificial intelligence risks in there that are possibly inherent with data sets. So it'll lead to things like bias. So if we want to kind of cover this very quickly before we get into the examples.
Sure. So bias occurs. Generative AI probably has the biggest opportunity to absorb biases in data. Particular kinds of borrowers that get turned down, not for good credit reasons, but turned down for strange reasons that are resident in the data. Remember now, generative AI is just memorizing patterns in a data set. It's not thinking about which ones are consistent or which ones are meaningful. It just memorizes them and applies them. And that can lead to some very unfortunate outcomes. Expert systems, however, they're very different. When it gets to a particular kind of problem, like let's say the borrower's pay stub is not consistent with the application, how it resolves that is extremely consistent. It takes similarly circumstanced borrowers and resolves their situation in the same way every time. So you get a certain fairness and consistency out of an expert system, whereas a generative AI may give you some form of bias. It'll take you down different paths, and maybe similar kinds of borrowers may be adjudicated much differently in generative AI. So that's what bias means, and that's kind of like the problem. I hope that makes some sense.
Yep.
Transparency, when you get to the generative AI types, they're very much black boxes. When you get to the expert systems, they're very much linked to the logical infrastructure that's being represented at the time. In the case of the underwrite, that would be what the guidelines say. Next one. Security risks. Yeah, require a lot of data to function properly. That's absolutely true. And what's a computer revolution is probably brought to us is the ability to handle data sets in the hundreds of millions, in this case loans, across thousands of data points, and do so with great authority. That's been 10 years ago, you couldn't do that. Now you can do that all day long. So there's some things there that are very good, but you have to represent to yourself the fact that if you're using generative AI, your conclusions and your recommendations are only as good as the data and only as good as your ability to interpret the data. In expert systems, your concepts are only as good as your ability to represent the thought structure of that particular kind of expert and do so consistently. So there's a lot of things there. Security is a big deal. And you just have to protect these systems. You just can't let them out there for anybody to use. Next one, please. Over-reliance. I think once people understand the kind of AI they're dealing with and what its limitations are, I think you're going to see the tendency to just rely on AI is going to be modified by the tendency of what the AI is doing and what the outcomes are, because some things look really good on the surface, but once you get down to them, they're not quite as powerful as and I must say, people in my profession, I think one of the first things we do when we invent something is overrepresent it. It solves all the world's problems. And I've seen my colleagues, maybe even myself, do that on occasion. And we just have to temper it. We're just not as good as it looks in the lab. And once it gets out in the real world, such as the gentleman here, Scott and Jim, they'll tell you when it gets into the real world, it's not exactly as powerful and as clean as it seems in the lab. So we have a lot of challenges still, and we have to basically temper our reliance on AI with where it's actually performing well and where it's passing the test of time. And in some of these AIs, they're very new. So give them some time. Regulatory compliance. This is an interesting thing. In some kinds of AI, such as expert systems that have been applied to the underwriting problem, they are able to identify mortgage defects in real time and solve them. And this is a new event. Typically, you could only just pave over the defect and hope you detect it in time so you could acknowledge it before the loan is sold. But now you have the opportunity to identify the defect in progress and to take action to resolve it. And that's particularly new. But nonetheless, there's still a regulatory element there, and ensuring regulatory compliance and its sisters' bias and fairness. Those things are, I think, challenging for some kinds of AI and more competently done by others.
And I've called in the FHFA just released, along with a couple of heads of the GSC, some concerns about AI being used, particularly how it can impact bias. I think they did that a couple weeks ago.
You have to find ways to test for it. I would recommend to sit there and say AI is bad. That's probably not fair to AI. And to say that AI is ultimately good is not fair either. You have to find ways to test it and represent it your results. But in a way, in some forms of AI, they're more consistent than their human counterparts, and that's probably a big deal.
Okay, so let's get to it in action with Jim and Scott. As we've talked at the very high level, I think, again, the most sort of practical day-to-day application that most brokers are going to likely use will be ChatGPT, which right now is available sort of in two forms. There's a free version that's ChatGPT 3.5, and then there's a paid version that you can use, which is the one I think most people are hearing about, which is ChatGPT 4. And so it's capable of quite a few different things. And so we wanted to walk our brokers here through a couple of scenarios of things they may likely do with the ChatGPT, either 3.5 or 4 version. Scott and Jim both are using the 4 version. So what you're going to see may be a little different than if you try to do the same thing in 3.5. And so ChatGPT only came online 6 months ago, at the end of December, or early December. And I think, if I recall reading it the other day, has amassed faster and more users now than TikTok, or it's getting very close. It's the fastest growing app since TikTok. So we're going to get right into it here. So what I gave them was some information about one of our products, and asked them to come up with something in ChatGPT and see how it goes. So, gentlemen, you want to take over?
Absolutely. So one of the greatest features of ChatGPT and AI is helping someone that may have a brain freeze on being creative, or thinking of a new way to present something, or even attracting new data or information about something you're not familiar with. So think of a tool that you have with your lender right now, like a product selector tool, for example. This application we're going to share now is really just taking a new product, which most of us know about, which is a DSCR type of loan, that is becoming more and more familiar and popular. And what we did here is Scott and I are both give examples of messaging we can actually put in requests and responses. So we wanted to start with the basic foundation on how to actually set up a marketing campaign for DSCR loans specifically. And you can see in my little request, I said, please be enthusiastic. Thank you, Scott, for that insight yesterday on our call. So again, we're being nice to the ChatGPT, because as Scott would say, we're not sure if this is going to take over the world anytime soon. So I'm trying to be on the good side of AI. But anyways, this message was basically to be enthusiastic. And what came back was 5 categories. And these are the first 2. Basically, it came back with this response within a matter of seconds. And it was basically to set up a campaign for me to follow and all the steps to do that. And what I love about this is you don't have to be creative. You don't have to be, studying this stuff a lot. You can actually get a lot of good insight by putting in things like parameters or keywords to understand and learn. And remember, ChatGPT is kind of like garbage in, garbage out, right? You have to validate the information you're getting back from it. You have to validate that it makes sense. So you can also put things in like what grade level you want to respond in, what types of other key things that are important to you. Do you want a presentation style with bullet points? Do you want it to have emojis, whatever it might be? But in this campaign example, we really had it be just specifically to talk about DSCR. So again, the first thing that was set up was a campaign objective. This was to educate realtors of the benefits of DSCR and leverage tools of this program for growth. Next slide, please, Carl. So in this, this is some of the marketing ideas that came back. What you'll notice about this, there's no video element to these campaigns. Content marketing, I guess, would be the closest thing to it. But as good as AI is going to get, I don't believe it's going to replace the authenticity of us as human beings. So I think it is actually something that's a very eye-opening part of learning about this, is that you're going to see that really it comes down to you being authentic and genuine from a relationship manager perspective, of adding value to realtors, to your clients, to past clients, to your vendor partners and community. So while these are all great ideas, it's not doing all these ideas for me, right? I still have to be putting this together in my own format. So you'll see there's an email campaign, a social media idea platform, webinars, seminars, and content marketing. So again, you could take any of these categories and drill down even further and ask ChatGPT again to give me examples of things, give me people to follow, give me top realtors that do DSCR, top lenders, whatever they might be. Next slide, please, Carl. So again, these ideas are just campaign activities. You could do this for any type of program. Again, we're highlighting DSCR today because it's very popular, and A&D is one of the best in the business that does these. So we're excited that we're a partner of theirs. But anyways, you can see that there's video series, email drip campaigns, social media challenges, and interactive webinars. So again, you could take any of these ideas and really dive down deeper into this all. They can make a script for you. They can make a post. They can make a text. They can do a lot more elements than what we're just sharing today. But again, start simple, start very foundational. I'm very foundational with this type of product and type of AI. I know Scott's a lot more sophisticated and detailed, but again, just start basic, get comfortable with the way you ask questions, and then dive deeper in the way you ask those questions to get the responses you want. And then again, put your own touches on them all too, because while we can all have the same information spit out from ChatGPT, the way we present ourselves, the way we can connect with those local relationships is truly still the way people know, like, trust, and refer you business. So while these things are great to accelerate the ability for me to be more creative and have more production time and more highest and best use of my abilities, it's still, basic information. And that's just really important to share. Last thing, Carl, I think I have one more slide, I believe. Yeah. And then again, you can see at the bottom of this message, it says regenerate response, which means if I want more answers or I want to see different examples of this, I can hit that button and it can regenerate other examples of things I want. I can dive deeper. I can dive deeper on this stuff. I can get more involved, more creative. But this is the simple overview of what you can do really to build the foundation for any loan officer, any level, any realtor at any level, anyone that's looking to dive into this. You can create a campaign very easily and get as customized and complex as you like, but start very basic, get comfortable, and make sure that, it's you. It's authentically you. And that's all I really have to share. I'd love to pass it over to Scott because I'm excited to learn from Scott more today because he is truly the expert of this. So please take it away, Scott, and thank you for your time.
Sure. No, that was great, Jim. Thank you. And so what we did is we started off with Jim said, we'll create a campaign. What do we do with this information? We want to talk about DSCR. What ways can we do it? So you saw a whole list of things that we could do. So what we did is we pulled out a couple of different things, and I've got a couple to show you, and then I think Jim has a couple more to show you as well. So because I am a blogger and I do a lot of content creation, I want to have it write some content for me. So this is a kind of a best practice that I typically do is I do a setup prompt. And so this one, I tell it I'm a mortgage broker and I want to create content around this program. And I said, here are the highlights of the program. Don't do anything yet. Let me give you the highlights and just tell me that you understand. Now, the reason why I tell it to tell me that let me know you understand, it's not so much to test whether it knows what I'm saying. It's more to say if I asked it, correctly. So that it'll repeat back to you what it thinks you're asking it to do. And so that's why I do it this way. And then what I literally did is Carl gave us the flyer for DSCR programs. So we literally copied and pasted the flyer off of a PDF, and I said, here is the source, and we just pasted it in there. Go ahead and go to the next one, Carl. There we go. So ChatGPT comes back and says, absolutely, I understand. You're asking for content creation around this program based on the details that you gave. It says the goal is to create an engaging and informative piece to attract and educate potential borrowers. I don't know if we did. Yeah, we did do borrowers on this one about this particular loan program. I'll ensure to emphasize the benefits and flexibility, as well as outline the eligibility criteria. Let me know when you would like to proceed. So then I said, great, fantastic. I'm always polite to it. Like I said, if it turns into Skynet, I wanted to always remember I was the nice guy. So it's like, thank you very much, ChatGPT. Can you please write me a 300-word blog post? So what Jim said earlier, input equals output with ChatGPT. And I don't know if I go overboard on some of this, but I'm thinking ahead of what I want this blog post to be. You can just type in, give me a 300-word blog post, and it's going to give you a 300-word blog post. I like to get a little bit more detailed. So I'm asking it to follow Google's SEO best practices, because that's available on the internet. It can look it up and find it. I'm asking it to include headlines, H2 and H3 headlines. These are SEO tactics, but they're also readability. And then I asked it to add bullet points to make it more readable. The audience is going to be real estate investors. So this particular article is for consumers, and there's a reason for that. And so I explained this is who this is for. The tone is informational, enthusiastic, output in markup language so that I can copy and paste it into a blog post and it looks nice. And then write at a 9th grade reading level. There's a lot of elements that you can give it, a lot of commands that you can give it in order to tell it what to do. You can tell it the tone, and you can tell it what grade reading level. I like 9th grade reading level. 7th grade gets a little too simplified, and you lose some of the meat of the product. Carl, let's see what it does with that prompt that I gave it. So here we go. So it gave us a blog post. It gave us a headline, Unleash the Power of DSCR Mortgages, a New Wave in Real Estate Financing. Why choose DSCR mortgages? So again, and Jim said this, and I think Tom warned about this. It doesn't always know what it's doing. So you have to read this. It hallucinates. Hallucination is the word that they use. It hallucinates a lot. So if it doesn't know something, it'll just make it up. So it's really, really important that even though this looks really nice, you have to read through this and you have to make it your own. These tools will not do your job for you. But what we're going to show you could have been 4 to 6 hours worth of work of creative writing and editing and modifying. But we did this in like 15 minutes. We punched it out. Now we got to go back through, spend an hour or so going through it. So I'm not going to read this thing because I really want you to see the visual part of this, but see how it's kind of highlighting it, and it's focusing on readability. So it's using SEO best practices to be found on Google, but it's also using readability best practices so that the consumer, it's easy to consume so that you can have consumers will want to read your article. You want to go to the next slide, Carl? And then here we go again. So breaking down the DSCR mortgage, and it's just giving us bullet points, high level bullet points, what's eligible. And again, it's pulling all of this data off of the flyer that we copied and pasted into it. Let's see the next one. And then it basically says, harness the power of DSCR today. So go ahead and go to the next one. So what we did here is we wrote an article to consumers. The next thing that we're going to do is we want to write a LinkedIn post to realtors to ask them to share our post with any investors that they might know that may or may not know about the DSCR program, or they may or may not know that we offer the DSCR program. So what I did is I said, and you can't really see this, but I said, write me a LinkedIn post to an audience of real estate agents. So it's taking that perspective. And I want to encourage them to share my blog post with any clients that they might be working with. And so this is what it did, is it produced us a nice little LinkedIn post that's really cool. It gives high-level highlights, and it just says, hey, please share this article that I wrote with all these people. So not only are we providing education and value for their consumers, for their customers, we're giving them something to help them generate business, because, we know inventory is tough. We know the market is tough, and agents need as much help as they can possibly get. So they gave us, so it punched out a nice little LinkedIn. So that's to a real estate agent audience. Carl, what did we do next? Remind me. Next slide. Okay.
Facebook ads.
Okay, so then what we did is we want to promote our article to real estate investors. So I said, can you give me 3 options for Facebook ads that will target real estate investors, so it knows who the consumer is and so how to speak to that consumer. I want the tone to be enthusiastic. I want you to include emojis, and the call to action is to read my blog post. Now, I didn't go through this, and we didn't go through and edit this. So you may find something if you're on the replay and you're reading this and you're like, well, that doesn't sound great. No, it's not going to sound great, but it's 95% of the work. So the last 5% is 100% of the effectiveness of these types of things. So if you look at this, these are really good. I'm consistently impressed with its creativity when it's punching out these things. So we have 3 different Facebook ads that we can run with the call to action to go back to our article to read more about the details of what this program is. I think that's what we did. Oh, okay. So this is a little bit off topic, but this was interesting. This is interesting. So this is Bard. So this is Google's Bard. We've been talking about ChatGPT, but I think we wanted to kind of introduce Bard as well. Bard was horrible until this week. They had their big conference and they did a huge upgrade on Bard, and it's really cool. So this is, I'm actually doing I did a podcast today about this. And what I did is I told it, I'm a loan officer in Colorado, and I want to target first-time buyers, because first-time buyers are the market that we're going to be in for the next couple of years. Can you tell me which Colorado markets have the highest concentration of first-time buyers and why? And it punched me out a list of the counties or the areas in Colorado, and what percentage is first-time home, or what percentage of, I guess, all first-time home buyers. I'm not really sure what that represents. Is that 100%? So again, it's data and it's interesting. And I think there was one more slide, because we asked it to explain to us why these are the hottest markets. So it is pulling this data from like realtor.com and Zillow, and it will tell you what the references are. But that's another way to use it. I think the next slide is Jim said, oh, do we have the slides with Jim's time saving?
No,
I can just share some other examples real quick. So for clarity for everybody, Bard is the Google online version of AI. Yep. ChatGPT just got online access recently, but they are pretty much offline up till today. Correct. Bard is more of a Google search feature, and then once you do find an article or something real, or a request that's fulfilled back to you, you can actually do a Google search on those other requests. So it can take you to other existing pages of data that exist. So it's kind of cool about that is, and that's, we don't show it on the slide, but you can actually search for something. If there are other relevant articles that have already been created, you can go look at those articles to learn more, so that you're always not taking information that you're getting and necessarily not having a place to validate it. You can go validate it at other source points, which is really important. So I like Bard because it allows me to, I think, create more data that's real-time data, right? Yeah. Scott just mentioned that he got data from Realtor.com, from NAR, from whatever else exists in the world. So I do feel like now Bard has an advantage relative to ChatGPT with data-driven results, things that are real-time
current
information
data
that you need. Does that make sense, Carl? Is that how you see it?
Yeah. One of the things we didn't talk about, but that is a limitation at the moment of ChatGPT, unless you get the upgraded version, is it can only project through information up to, I believe it was February of 2021.
September 2021. So the data set in ChatGPT is only, it doesn't know current information.
And so the new plugin for 4.0, you said, it just launched, so it's starting to only populate the algorithm with current information if you're using 4.0.
Yeah.
And again, there are a million plugins. There's a million distractions out there. If you're new to this, like we all relatively are, except for Thomas, obviously, be careful how far you dive into this, because what I did when this first came out, when I first got involved with this, 6 months ago, I started getting on all these like Instagram posts and following all this stuff, and it is overwhelming. So all I would say for people that are relatively new to this topic, just take your time. It's kind of like going to a big national speaking event. There'll be 75 ideas. If you try to implement every single one of them, you'll fail miserably. Take 2 ideas, really learn those ideas, and specifically products like A&D's products, for example, like DSCR or other niche products. Get really good at those. Be a leader in your marketplace with a niche or 2 that you can add to your traditional business that you already have, and lead with those. Educate those consumers, educate those realtors, educate the community by using ChatGPT or Bard and the AI elements to really help you get out there and become a relevant expert overnight. I mean, I don't know, Scott, how much time you've spent blogging over your career, but it's crazy to think that this technology is going to probably replicate a lot of those activities you've done for 15, 20 years of your career. So, I mean,
makes it a lot easier though.
Yeah, and I use it a little bit in my day-to-day, and it's like I said, I've been writing for 25 years, so the blank page is the death knell of, I think, every marketer. So to just be able to spit this thing in there and have it come back with at least 1 or 2 good options in 30 seconds is a godsend.
Yeah.
But to a point we need to also point out is it's not the end all be all. It's like Scott said, it doesn't put out a perfect thing every time. It will have factual errors. So it's important that you actually do know a chunk about what you're inputting in. Yeah. I mean, that will help you with creating the inputs.
Absolutely.
But understanding what the output is going to make you way more effective. Don't just decide, hey, type in something about, write me a social media post about bank statements and think that what it's going to come back with is perfect. Understand the program that your lender's working with, who their audience is, who you're trying to find. So that's kind of important.
Can I also give 2 little nuggets that that might be nice?
Before you do, I'd like to offer one thought.
Yeah.
You're all bringing up a very relevant point, in that the ultimate arbiter of what is or isn't meaningful is still a person. It's not a ChatGPT. It's not an expert system. It's a person. And so we still haven't figured out how to endow a machine with good judgment or meaningfulness or any of those things. And we've been trying for half a century and we're still not there. So I think they're all bringing up a relevant point, in that the ultimate arbiter of meaningfulness is a person. And that still means you guys have to be involved. You have to decide if it's doing what you want done. And so I just wanted to offer that thought. But thank you so much for touching on it in a variety of ways.
Yeah, it's important. And like you said, we kind of glossed over the perils, but that goes into what you were talking about to some degree with the over-reliance of AI. It's not perfect, not yet. And let's hope it doesn't get there quite yet. I don't think any of us are ready for the Skynet scenario. But with that, let's go ahead and open up stuff to questions. I'll give you a couple to start off with, because I'm sure it's out there. When you see all the articles, it's number one concern right now for people is that AI is going to replace their job. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you guys as brokers and realtors and content creators, are you guys worried that this is going to make us do the way of the dinosaur?
Yeah, I guess I'll go first. I'm certainly not concerned about it. Again, it's a tool. It's a tool that we can use to be more productive, to amplify our reach. Like Jim said, to save time. It can save a lot of time. So those things like, we've got a new product and we want to do a launch on it. Instead of having a committee of people figuring it out, it's a lot easier, especially for us, especially for brokers. If we've got small shops and we're wearing all the hats in our business, we don't always get to our prospecting or our marketing. A lot of times we get caught up doing other things. This is just a good tool for saving some time, helping us think a little bit differently about these things. We're not all marketing experts, but this gives us some great ideas that we can say, okay, this is good. I'm not worried about it replacing anybody. A couple of things real quick. A lot of people say, well, there's going to be a bunch of AI garbage on the internet. Well, the internet is filled with garbage right now. So there's no chance there's going to be more garbage. It's going to be relatively the same. And the other thing is you can take one of my prompts or one of Jim's prompts and you can put it into ChatGPT. It will never produce the exact same thing twice. It's always going to say it in a little different way. So I heard a lot of people saying that, they're worried about plagiarism and copying and things like that. It's always going to be a little bit different, but I would just encourage you to use it as a tool and be responsible with it. Don't use it to try to game the system, because the system is way smarter than you and you'll never be able to game it. So just use it responsibly and use it for good. It's a super powerful tool. Just use it for good.
Great point, Scott. And I'm not scared of ChatGPT taking my job. If every home in the United States was the exact same cookie cutter, if every borrower was the exact same, if every person had the exact same financial situation, then yeah, I'm worried about ChatGPT. But more importantly, I'm worried about my career, because I no longer can add value to specific people that have life events that are unique to their situation. So this should share with you even more that you have to be more authentic and genuine in those areas where that is important. So taking all this time savings that you're going to get from tools like ChatGPT are fantastic, because it can make you a stronger, more relevant local professional that adds custom value and solutions. And I even took it one step farther yesterday in my meeting I have with my team. I have a real estate and lending team. So I asked them the same challenge, which was whoever can come up with the best in 1 week, whoever can come up with the best plan around a new product or niche to using ChatGPT, I'm going to give them a $100 gift card. So now my team is now self-generating ideas and thoughts, not having to come to managers or leaders or other people. And now they're more empowered as individuals to do things. They're going to be far ahead in different categories than I can ever be in. And it's just the power of these great tools and innovations that exist. So knowing these tools and how to use them is important and powerful. You can promote your partners in terms of them learning about these tools and knowledge, and it's unlimited. And so be careful also what you wish for, because you could go off on tangents for hours on this stuff too. So I'm sure Scott has done that. I've done that. And yeah, just stay focused on your overall goals and be you.
Tom, where do you see stuff go? I mean, this is only these technologies have now only been available for most of the public for 6 months or so. What do you see based on sort of your, your background in the industry? I mean, do you?
Well, I think where it's being used, for example, in marketing, and trying to find, for example, paths for the first-time buyer, or first-time home buyer. Those are the kinds of things that I think AI can help with, because it's very good at finding associations in data and telling you the next association, the next step in that logical analysis. What the people on the call have pointed out, though, is that to determine if that next step is meaningful to you, if that next step is something you want to go do, that's a human endeavor. And so what I think this technology does in the domain of getting as much out of these simple associations as possible, it does that very well, and it saves you a lot of time because you don't have to go do the research to make those associations on your own. You don't have to discover those trends on your own. The machine can. But at some point, deciding which trends are meaningful and how you're going to use them and what problem you're going to solve, meaning the intent and what purpose you're going to pursue, that's a very human endeavor. And I think what I've seen people say, which I tend to believe, is that AI is not going to replace me, but people that know how to use AI may replace me. So I think we all have to be aware that this is
wow.
Yeah, but you're a rocket scientist, so you're irreplaceable.
Oh, I don't think so. Thank you for the thought, but I'm just saying I think people that know how to use AI, meaning take it to the next level, but make it more meaningful, make it more purposeful, have it serve higher goals. That's the future, and that's very much a human endeavor.
Yes.
It's not a machine endeavor. Anybody who thinks that's a machine endeavor, you guys show me the machine that can do that. I don't know one, and I've been looking at this stuff for 40 years. Anyway, just a few thoughts.
Yeah, and most of what the creation we've been talking about is text-based, but there are other tools out there that are, obviously we're hearing about it in the music industry with people who are generating songs in the style of The Weeknd and a few others. You're seeing it being done in video, obviously with deep fakes. There are some software packages out there that are really quite good and almost a little bit scary, but I think there's some applications that could be used for webinars or 30-second commercials if people don't have that capability. And they're affordable options. And there's stuff to generate art or pictures or photography. So there's so many applications that are now available to brokers. I think that if you are a one-person shop and you're just starting out, you can't hire an ad agency, you can't hire SEO people. ChatGPT and some of these tools are affordable that you can pretty much have a good running start if you're not a marketing expert. We're fortunate. We're a big company. We've got specialists in our team that help us with things. But I mean, even in the few blog items that I've done personally with ChatGPT, I've been writing for 20 plus years. When I started, SEO didn't exist. So I didn't learn formal rules of SEO, but ChatGPT writes things in a way that are very helpful that I've seen a marked increase in what I normally would write in my own language versus the assistants there, where it puts in a little bit of SEO expertise there. So I sit on the fence with it. It's a great tool for when you have nothing in the tank and you just got to get things started. But I do see the risks that are out there. You could become very lazy with it and just throw things out there and not care what's in there. So people have to be wary of doing that. I'm not seeing any questions, but go ahead, people. If you've got questions, throw them in the Q&A. I'll give you a couple of minutes. I'll do a little bit of the wrap-up session here. If you guys will scan the QR code here, you'll go to a landing page where you can find all of our social media, as well as joining our email lists. Just a quick word about us again. So as I think you've heard, Jim is an advocate for us, and thank you, Jim, for promoting our DSCR loans. And
thanks for doing a great job. I mean, you guys are one of the best in the business, if not the best. So thank you for all your hard work. We
appreciate it. We'll look at your conventional loans as well. So just to remind everybody a little bit about us. Again, we're nationwide. We have developed a very streamlined loan process that allows us to have the fastest turn times. We're pretty much 24 hours on everything that we do. The staff here is highly trained on non-QM conventional government loans. So there's really nothing that we think that we can't do. So we have a very can-do attitude. And most of our underwriters have at least 10 years experience. So they've pretty much seen it all at this point. And then tying back to what we talked about with our relationship with the Imperial Fund, it allows us to have flexible underwriting. We do both manual and AUS, but we make sure that even though we use technology, that we don't lose that human touch. And then we keep very strict tabs on everything going on in the market. So because we are we are the proprietor of our own non-QM program, we can create them as ever they need to be developed for the market. So we'll be launching a few new things next week that I think will be interesting to people. We won't tease it out there just yet, but be tuned on our social media to find out what it is. And then every month, at the beginning of the month, we do a broker orientation for both new and existing partners, just to remind people what it is that we do, our tech process, our tech platforms. We provide you guys with tips on how to get loans closed faster. And then towards the end of every month, we do some type of predominantly sales focused educational webinar like this one. Next month, we're going to focus pretty heavily on ways to tap into home equity, hint, related to some of our new products. So we'll be doing that. We'll be joined by a couple of other additional experts who work at reverse mortgages and home equity loans. So keep tabs on that. And then very quickly, we've got our contact information for all of our speakers. Tom, if you want to send me your phone and email, if you want people to be able to get in touch with you after.
Sure.
We've got both Scott and Jim's QR codes, and then you probably will never need to get in touch with me, but you'll get an email from everybody. Will have my contact information. You'll get an email from me probably before the end of the day with the recording, a copy of the presentation, and then as a special bonus for the people who showed up, we put together kind of a 2-page cheat sheet on how to structure those queries within ChatGPT, so you can get some of the same results that you're seeing. Again, I want to thank our speakers. I don't see any, additional questions out there. So I think we've covered everything for people. Tom, thank you for your incredible depth of knowledge of AI and sharing with us and all the different types that are out there and the risks and the rewards. And then, Scott, Jim, you guys are phenomenal users of this material. I think even just in our preparations for the webinar, I think we picked up a whole bunch of fun tips from Scott. Apparently the real key is to be polite with our soon-to-be overlord AI machine to make sure that it understands what we're asking it to and to write something that sounds enthusiastic. So with that, we're going to close out, and I want to thank everybody for really, again, I was looking forward to doing this one. You guys let the nerdy side of me out to talk about AI, so I appreciate it. So for everyone else, we'll be signing off. So have a great rest of your evening. Great rest of the day, and enjoy your Memorial Day weekend coming soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.